And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo, and we have a great show in store for you. If possible, we can see ourselves on the screen here so we know where we're sitting. Great, it would be very helpful. Thank you. And we have the cast, director, and writer of a play called Room with Stars, which I had an opportunity to see the reading of just a few days ago, and it was wonderful. Ah, there we are, guys. All right, Room with Stars, and we have sitting next to me on the right the writer of the play, Nina Hughes. Nina Hughes, right? Howes. I'm sorry, Nina Howes. My handwriting is funny. Nina Howes, and then we have Yesenia Ortiz, right? Oh, sitting on the right, far right, and then directly behind me we have Jon-Paul Ruiz. Right, and then of course Elizabeth Ruf Maldonado. Hi, welcome, and she's been on the show before as well. You might all know her. And then we have the beautiful Alice Haber, who is the lead actress. Welcome. All right, and so wow, we got everybody up there. It looks great, and in the background is the stage, and we can't see so much of it, but at least I love it. It creates this theatrical auteur there, right? That we're in a theatrical room right now. So this was I'm going to go so far as to say that this was a political play.
I think that would be correct.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely correct. So let me begin with Nina, Nina Howes, who's the writer of this play, and tell me when did you write it? How did you write it? Where did you write it? What's the story of it?
I started this play several years ago. A lot of it is autobiographical, and I was doing it mainly because I was thinking of some of the craziness I went through when I was a teenager. Some of the political stuff I went through, some of the obstacles I had to deal with, and I thought, the young people have to carry this on. They have to keep things going. I mean, the older people, we can keep up there, but it's the young people who are going to carry on the spirit. And I wanted to write this play as like an inspiration to them. That you can go up against the system. You might have to take some knocks, but in the end, that's just what you have to do and keep going. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what drove me to write it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to come back to you because I have a lot of questions. And Elizabeth, you're the director. As a director, do you consider this a political play? Did you direct it as such?
I think everything's political, but this is especially political.
Right. And how long? Tell us a little bit about your role as a director. You've been directing these kind of things for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, directing in general, or... I guess I've always loved collaborative process, and so I've done a lot of theater. I love working with large groups of people, and I like working with people sometimes who are new to theater and mixing people who are new to theater with people who are experienced with theater, and maybe that's political in its way. But in this case, Nina and I spoke, and we definitely wanted experienced people. So I've done a lot of work at Theater for the New City. I did write and direct and perform in a production of The Iron Heel, which was a dance operetta. And so if you know about The Iron Heel, it's a novel by Jack London, and it's pretty political. And, so that was one of my favorite things I've directed, but I have collaborated with Nina before. We worked at the Metropolitan Playhouse, and there was a Transcendentalist Festival. So she wrote a play about one of the first communes, which was in the 1840s, Brook Farm, George and Sophia Ripley, and it was a two-hander with George and Sophia. And it was part of this festival where we had Ralph Waldo Emerson and Thoreau, and
all the political ones.
Yes, so it was really cool, and I love working with Nina. So she asked me to come in and direct this one, and she also asked me to play a role in it, which was exciting because I also love that.
We'll get to that in a second, because I want to now talk to three of the other actors and give them an opportunity to tell us a little bit about what their roles were. Let's see. You were mom,
I was.
daughter, boyfriend, crazy guy who went off to the war, and Mary House advisor from the Catholic Worker, advisor from the 60s, Catholic Worker, helping.
And his aunt.
And his aunt, right? That was so his family connection as well, right? I caught that. So let's go around, and maybe we'll start because you begin the action of this reading of the play because you get in a lot of trouble in high school. It's high school 1969, And boy, a lot of people got in trouble in high school in 1969. So tell us about your version of that.
Yeah, so Sam, I'm guessing is the autobiographical character that Nina wrote. And she is very anti-war. And she wants to help her community and make change. And so she steals a typewriter from school to help the diggers in her local community. And then she gets into a lot of trouble and she gets knocked down a lot. But it's all about her coming back out of it and still wanting to make change and still wanting to fight for those who don't really have a voice.
Now, you don't remember the diggers, but you must know something about them. Who were the diggers? There's a few of them still around, actually, in the neighborhood.
Yes, so they were the ones that gave out free food in the parks to the people.
Now it's called not bombs, right?
Food Not Bombs.
Food Not Bombs, right? Food Not Bombs is a similar type of thing today. Although nothing could be like the diggers. They were their own thing. All right, great. And then so this is your boyfriend who wants to get married. Tell us a little bit about your role as the boyfriend.
So I played the role of Steve. He's very loving towards her, but he's really stuck into his own thing. He really wants to get a house for her and make sure that he has enough money, and he really doesn't feel like he can really do as much as she can with school-wise because she's really, really smart and he's a mechanic. So he decides to just go off to the war, and he's very just quiet. He's too quiet, like they say, like the Angelina said in the play. So it's definitely a really good. It was really, really, really good the way Nina wrote it.
In 1969 would have been a tough time for you guys.
Definitely.
It would have been tougher than now, and it's probably not easy either nowadays, but back then it would have been very tough, right? Because people just didn't go for it. You know, they just didn't go for it in those days. So how did you approach that?
I kind of really tried to dig into like people that I know were like really, really all kind of for the war and not really too caring about what other people had to say, whether the war was wrong or not. They were just kind of just really into their own thing, into the benefit of being a soldier, into those benefits of having the GI Bill and having those kind of real good benefits. That's all they cared about.
Not thinking about that they might be killing people or being
that
shot
doesn't
at
deserve
or
it.
like that. Yeah.
Bombing,
common in those days.
bombing people with napalm and really just really, really bad things that they were doing, and they just really didn't care at that time. All they cared was about getting their house and being able to have their money, not knowing that they're destroying families. And wow, it was really, really crazy.
So Yesenia Ortiz, let's say your aunt and your advisor, and advisor to both. How did you come about this part? What did this part mean to you?
It meant kind of revisiting a lot of relatives, even in my own life. I kind of modeled the character after my grandmother, who in her own way was very much active politically. She came to New York when she was 16 by herself. She worked in a hat factory, and then she went on to raise 3 children, and she worked as a cafeteria in the school cafeteria, the public school system. And I remember as a young girl, she would gather all of her friends for every primary, for every major election, even involved with her local church in their activities, in their events. And she always would try to speak in a very broken kind of English, but she never quite mastered the language. Even though Angelina kind of mastered it, I didn't go that far. But she had a saying. She used to say, "Vota o te votan." So loosely translated means vote or you will be voted out. And these are kind of the issues that even back then, even like in the 70s, because, you know, I was a young child in the 70s, we still were suffering the remnants of the war, of what happened in Vietnam. I mean, the Bronx was burning still. And even in the early 80s, with like the crack epidemic, my grandmother always had something to say about it. So I kind of took on her persona, the way that she would go about things. And she was one to also say, you know, you need to fight. You have to overcome. You have to win. You have to win. You have to find a way to win.
What was the advice you gave as the aunt of someone who was thinking that they could, you know, beat the odds and go to war and it wouldn't affect them? And then the advisor to the woman who was a liberal, much more progressive.
Right. I think that Angelina, as much as she wanted her to fight, right? Sam to fight, she was very scared for Steve to fight. So it was a different kind. She was conflicted within the message because she believes in the ideals that everyone should fight, that America is so great. But then again, it's personal. She already went through something already because in the play, her son got into trouble and for something that he didn't do, and he was jailed. So it's a lot of confliction. But throughout the conflictions and everything, she still managed to be an advisor, to be support to those that really needed the support. And that's really what struck me as such an awesome thing, especially during that time. We needed places like the Catholic Worker where people could come and talk and just feel supported.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Nina Howes, the author of this play, I wanted to go to you again and ask you what there was. Don't tell the endings, but you had in the after the reading, folks were asking you questions, and they said there was 2 endings. Without telling the endings, what were the meaning of both those endings, and why did you choose one over another for the reading the other night?
Well, the way the play's written now, there are 2 endings. That might change when I do rewrites. But the first ending was with Sam being in the detention center. She lost the case. But Angelina comes to her and inspires her, and she's determined to keep going. The second ending was Sam wins the case, but then she gets the news that Steve has been killed at Fort Dix by friendly fire. So it's like, it's sort of this King Lear ending, like, oh, gods, why? And so I don't know the 2 endings. What
was the ending like for you back then?
The ending was the first one. Because I'm still here, I think.
How long did you spend in jail?
I don't know if I want to get into all that. But
that's sort of interesting.
Yeah, but it was...
I was just talking to a Vietnam veteran the other day. He was in the Merchant Marine, and he had a boatload of napalm that was heading to Vietnam. And him and his partner seized the boat at gunpoint, and they took it to Cambodia. And he spent 10 years in prison, and his friend was executed by the Khmer Rouge because he escaped from the Americans not to be caught, and then the Cambodians caught him, and he was just an American, and they shot him.
Oh, my God.
And he went to the American Embassy and turned himself in, and he came to prison and served 10 years. And he said to me when I was interested in it, it's a long time ago, Paul. It was a long time ago. Those days are a long time ago, right? But he said that napalm never did make it to Vietnam. Which is good. And there's many stories like that, many stories in that era like that.
I mean, there's a lot of stories about the draft resistors that I was reading, as I was doing this play. And one of the first draft resistors in New York City, David, I think his name was David Miller, and he was a volunteer at the Catholic Worker. And he burned his draft card, I think it was in the spring of '65. And he was in and out of court for a few years. And then finally they got him, and he had to do 2 years in a penitentiary.
Right, it was serious crime, burning a draft card or not going to the draft. It could be up to 5 years in prison. And some people did 5 years because they refused to cooperate and made a stint about it. But so this is the era we're talking about. This is the height of the era. So this is like serious business. And how does this relate to today? Maybe I should go to the director and ask her, did you think of today's politics at all when you were directing this play, and how it's going on today and how that related to the 60s and India?
I mean, of course, there's it's interesting because the way activism changes with the years, and a lot of people, I feel like there's too much that's gone online, that people feel like clicking a button or signing a petition and that's going to be done. But then when I really look at it, there is a lot of action in the streets, and there has been a lot of Black Lives Matter actions, and on any given day, of course, Occupy Wall Street in recent memory, and the connection with Wisconsin and Wall Street. And I grew up in Wisconsin. So
it's a little bit more than cheese and milk.
A little more than cheese and milk, yeah.
Right.
But Bob La Follette and a tradition of real socialism, democracy, I guess.
When I showed up, you could still smell the gunpowder.
Okay.
As I remember.
When
I showed up in the late 70s.
Army Math Research Center.
Well, I wasn't getting that. Yeah, I actually ran into those guys afterwards. They were very apologetic, but it shows you the emotions.
Yeah.
The emotions that drove people to do crazy things that 2 minutes after they did them, they said, I can't believe I did that, right? Right? And that's what it was like. And so let me talk to you guys. Let's go to Jon-Paul Ruiz and ask him, does this mean anything to you? You guys are so much younger. I mean, now you're in the age of Trump.
Yes.
It's just getting started.
Yes.
If it's like what it was like in the 60s, but I don't know if history really repeats itself or not. But what do you think about today in your life in terms of what these folks went through?
Today, in terms of my life, I feel like it's more have to do with, definitely stepping up and definitely protesting. Right now, a big issue right now is definitely with the cops and our youth, definitely black minorities, the way they abuse us, the way they take advantage. It's really sad, and I can really, really relate to the need to protest and the need to actually do something about it, because a lot of us aren't really doing anything about it. We're getting there right now. Stop the violence against the police brutality. We're really getting there, and we're finally getting cameras on these people, and we're finally getting to a point where I feel like they were getting to that point where, people were able to speak their mind and not in fear of getting in trouble for it right now. And that really paved the way for this right now, for us to have the ability to speak upon it, because and then on top of that, a lot of people don't want to speak to the youth about these problems. But now they're actually really, really getting down to what can we do for, because now we're growing up. Like, I'm 21 years old. I was born in 97, so I definitely.
So you were a kid even when 9/11 happened. Even
yes.
that.
Yes.
Even something that is in a way that's why. Well, let's go to Alice. I wanted to talk to Alice about this, because one of the things that's different about now till then is that you could be drafted. I think they're going to include women in the next draft if they do it. And there's plenty of women now in the military in combat roles. You never would have thought of that in the 1960s. Who would have seen that coming? So in some way, you share some of the same concerns that he does.
No, absolutely. And there's so much injustice still in the world. There's so much going on. But now the difference is that we have so many more platforms to speak about it and to share this information. And information is so powerful. And it's important to share it. And for example, you need to understand that some people might be more privileged than others. But instead of just feeling bad about your privilege or just complaining about it, the important issue is to use that to speak out and to raise the voices that are unheard. And I feel like that's so important right now, especially with this amazing access to so many different platforms and so many different ways to speak up and act on it. And it's not just about, it's not so many small actions anymore. Now we have a wider audience that can listen and that we need to reach.
Great, thank you for that. And Yesenia, let me go to you and ask you to put it in context of your life in this modern world, that we live in today with Trump and all this. It's a little bit different, but it has echoes of those days, it seems.
I mean, it's kind of like every generation now it's kind of like a similar kind of line. It has its roller coaster rides. the biggest issue that I see, it's like the racial tensions, and that's also has to do with a lot of war. You know, it's a big thing with the war, the genocides, not just in the third world countries that we go. It's just like in all four corners of the world. It's been a big issue, and this was happening when I was growing up. It's kind of the same similar issues. I grew up at his age during the late 80s, the 90s. We still had issues with the cops. We had
Tompkinsville Park, I remember well.
Right, the AIDS epidemic, crack, and it's and of course the military has always come up. It's a very scary time. Jon-Paul is my son in real life. So it's scary for me to sometimes look at him and really wonder about where this country is going, like what's going to happen during his time. It made me really, it's all relatable. It's still very relatable. The whole play was still very relevant to the things that are happening today.
And almost everything, even the music. I could play a track from a 1965 song, and it seems like it was written yesterday.
Yes, yes.
But forget, if you do that with a 1980s song or a 1970s song, forget it. It sounds dated. If you go back even further, and it's more in relation to today.
It's like I think those times, during the 60s, all those political views and all, it's come around full circle again. Yeah. It's coming at the table again. Very good. It never really left. I don't think it ever really left.
Right. It rears its ugly head. All right, let's I want to talk to the writer again, Nina Howes, who wrote this play, and I wanted to ask you, Nina, tell us a little bit about the setting of this play is the Catholic worker. And the Catholic worker is a very specific thing with a specific ideology, a way of approaching these problems. And it goes back like 100 years.
It was, I think, started in the 1930s by Dorothy Day, who was an activist and a feminist and a suffragette and a journalist and a writer. And she saw some of the beauties, I guess, in the philosophy of Catholicism. She wasn't a Catholic person per se, but she went along with some of the theology of it, and she started. She wanted to do humanitarian work. She started, shelters for people to stay. This is in the 30s when there was the big depression. Right. So there were shelters for people to stay, soup kitchens for people to eat. So this was some of the work she was involved in, plus writing the Catholic worker paper. And they were very progressive. They had a philosophy of nonviolence, which was, I guess, very debatable at the time among all the groups on the left, but they were
during World War II when the Nazis were in Europe. But, I work with WBAI Radio, and they were pacifists, too. As a matter of fact, the founders of BAI were in a special work camp that they had to go to because they refused to serve in World War II. Yeah, they were strict pacifists. So we have a lot of connection. I wouldn't say now they're like that, but they were then. But is there a place then for that kind of pacifism, do you think, still?
Well, I'm
or you're down for the revolution. Down for the revolution. Down for the revolution.
She's a fighter.
I mean, I'm not into let's go be violent. On the other hand, I'm definitely into self-defense. I mean, if some racist is coming at me with a pitchfork, I'm not going to stand there and go, hey, come on with it. No.
Right.
It's like,
self-defense.
I mean, I fought with cops when they were beating people up. So, it helps being a white girl.
I can see you doing that. I can see you
there
doing
were
that.
5 cops smashing one guy. And they're like, no, stop. And they're trying to brush me off like on a fly,
Actually, that was in an early version of the play. That was one of the conflicts. Right?
Oh, maybe.
The girl was pulling.
Oh, right,
somebody off
right.
of
Yeah,
a
that
draft
was
assistant.
an earlier
Yeah.
draft. Yeah.
Right. So how are we doing, guys? How many minutes we got left?
We're at 8:25.
Okay, so we got 3 minutes left, so that's enough time to go around, maybe sum up what people think about the play and everything that happened. So let me jump back to the director, Elizabeth Ruf Maldonado, and ask her what you want us to take away from this experience, and tell us if it's going to be. Are we going to get to see it in any form?
Yeah, well, I could talk, I guess, a little bit about that process, about producing. So we are looking at another venue because we would like to put it on its feet. I'd love to keep the same cast if they're available, and oh, here we go. There's the Catholic Worker.
Right.
We would love, as you see, it's like the perfect spot because when
There's the
and
cat.
that puts the cat in the Catholic Worker.
Right.
There it is. I mean, and also,
All
yeah.
right. Oh,
So
nice. There's the whole cast, right?
Yeah.
if they could make room for us in the midst of all their missions, you know, it would be a great venue. Theater for the New City might be, you know, on a wish list, but you know, I think it definitely has legs. You know, we can definitely move it, and I would like to see it
All right.
done again and keep working on it for sure.
Great,
Yeah.
great. And anything else anybody would like to just throw in? It's like open to anybody who feels that they want to say something about what the play meant to them.
So the play definitely meant to me as in just get out there and do something. Definitely get out there, get together with people and find the cause that you feel like you have a purpose for and you feel like you have a love for, and you make sure you wholeheartedly go through it. And I want to say I'm very, very thankful for everybody here. Thank you for having me in the play.
Any other last words? 1 minute to go.
I'd like to say just one thing. I mean, quick. I'd like to pass it on too, but
have
yeah,
your
we
mic.
don't
You
need.
have a
Yeah, I
mic.
have a mic. The mom, because we didn't really talk about the mother character, and Nina wrote just such a complex role for a woman who really is frustrated in her life and hasn't had a chance and just is in despair because she feels like her daughter's throwing it all away and she doesn't really understand. But it's done with a lot of compassion.
Right, and that was
I
your
think
part.
that-
Yeah, you did.
And
Right, we talked to you more about your role there in the as the director, but of course you played the mom.
But
right?
I am a mom,
Yeah,
and you
right.
know, and actually my daughter is about Alice's age. So I mean, you know, it's all relatable. But I do want to say a good word for the moms, you know, because even if they're
Right.
not on board, you know, they're doing a lot. So I think Nina really got that.
All right, great. And I'd like to say thank you to our producer, director out there, our engineer.